Hey guys, Jack here and welcome back to another video on my channel. Now as you can tell by the title of today's video, I am carrying on a series that I run on my channel called Retro Consoles. Now the last time I actually filmed one of these videos was quite a long time ago, so I'm sorry in advance, but obviously I took the break from uploading and things like that, so I just couldn't really upload it. I never had the motivation to do it, but I've written down some notes and now I'm really motivated to talk about this. As you can tell, today's episode is we're going to be talking about the Gamecube. I actually bought this console probably just over a year ago and I haven't really played it a lot, but it's a console that I've really loved. So I'm going to throw a few facts at you about the Gamecube and let's get into that now. So the Gamecube is a console that was released by Nintendo in Japan and North America in 2001, and then PAL versions of the consoles were released in Europe in 2002. It actually came out in Japan first in 2001 and then they had to delay it in North America for a little while, but it still came out towards the end of 2001 when they wanted them to come out together. The Gamecube was the successor of the N64, so the N64 came out and then the Gamecube was the next console that Nintendo made. Competing with the Gamecube at the time was the PlayStation 2, which was obviously the next version of the PlayStation 1, which I did the last episode on, and the original Xbox console. They were all out at the same time, all competing in the same market. The most unique thing about the Gamecube was that it was the first console to ever use optical drives. It used mini DVD drives like this size. We weren't really used to these size discs. We were used to discs a lot bigger, like DVD size, but it was the only console that was actually just predominantly made for gaming. It wouldn't play audio CDs, it wouldn't play DVDs like other consoles would at that time. Basically, the Gamecube was made by Nintendo for the sole purpose of only being able to game on the console. Gamecube was actually compatible with online play, but you'd need an adapter, and was also available for connection with a Game Boy Advance, but again you would need an adapter, an additional purchase of an adapter, and then you could play with your Game Boy Advance and your Gamecube. So it was a pretty win-win situation, to be fair, but you'd have to have both. It would have to be compatible. The Gamecube console was actually discontinued in 2007, and at the time they discontinued it, it had sold 21.74 million consoles, which is a massive amount for that size company. During the Gamecube's lifespan from 2001, when it was first released, to when it ended in 2007, when the last console was sold or made or along those lines, there had actually been 600 games made for the console itself. Now I'm not sure in comparison to nowadays whether that's quite a lot or not a lot, but I don't know how many consoles nowadays are actually making that. They may be making way more. That may be actually the amount that consoles these days are actually making, but it seems like back then that seemed like a lot. 600 games for one console within 6 years effectively. The popular games that were on the Gamecube were Simpsons Hit and Run, which was also compatible for PS2. There was a load of James Bond games that came out on there as well, in particular GoldenEye. What else did we have? Zelda was also on there, which was a big hit game. Mario Double Dash, and the big one, Mario Sunshine. I remember playing that game a lot when I was younger. The most popular game that was ever created for the Gamecube was Super Smash Bros. Melee, which actually sold 7 million copies worldwide, which is obviously quite a lot. I didn't actually play that game. I really want to get it for my Gamecube, but I didn't play it unfortunately. The Gamecube consoles came in a variety of colour. To begin with, they released this version, which they called the Indigo version, but a lot of gamers knew it as the Purple edition. They also released a black version, and then a little bit later on they released a silver version. There are loads of limited edition console versions that you can get that respond to like Pokemon games and Metroid, and you could also get consoles that were specifically made for games, but they'd have like a different front plate. So I'll try and pop a few examples on screen, but basically you had consoles that were exclusive in Japan. Like there was one that was an orange one that was absolutely huge. You had a silver one, a goldish one, which was also a sick addition to a console, but was also very expensive, and nowadays it's probably worth about £100, which is quite a lot for one of these. My Gamecube actually cost me £50, and I'll show you the games it came with. So those were some few facts for you about the Gamecube. Now I'm going to run for you about my experiences. Now I remember first ever playing a Gamecube probably when I was about the age of about 8, so it's actually quite long after the Gamecube was released. When I was 8 years old, it was 2005 then, so I was born in 1997. When I was 8 it was 2005, and that's probably about the time, maybe 7 or 8, within 2 or 3 years of it actually being released, I got to play it. And I remember the day I played it, it was like such a cool thing, because at the time I think I had a PS2 and my brother had the Gamecube. So my parents bought me a PS2 to play and my brother a Gamecube, and I remember at the time we would have friends sleeping over every now and again, and we'd get the controllers out and we'd all be playing Super Monkey Ball, GoldenEye and all those kinds of games. They are the types of games that when I was a kid, nowadays obviously the graphics of those aren't amazing and you wouldn't really play them as much because it's an older generation console, but back then it was so cool just playing with friends, and obviously, you know, being able to sit and enjoy a game like Super Monkey Ball, which is such a simple game but so fun to play with a load of people, was just amazing back then. So as you saw when I showed you it, I got the Indigo console. I was toying between getting the black and the silver, but I just thought for the nostalgia alone, you clearly just have to go for the purple one. Everyone knew the purple one, everyone was like, the purple Gamecube is clearly the best one, and it was really the first basic one that they ever made. Nintendo thought purple, or indigo, however they want to call it, a lot of people call it purple as I said, they tend to want people to call it indigo, but it's known as purple to a lot of people. But this was their first idea and the first concept for them, and the first one that was released. So it only seems fair as a collector of these older consoles that I get the first one, the first colour ever made. Another difference with the Gamecube was the controller. Now with classic controllers, this is a Xbox One controller, but obviously Xbox is similar. So Xbox was out at the time of the Gamecube being released, and we all knew that the A, B, X, Y button and all of that were all similar sizes, and it was the same with the PlayStation as well. You had all the X, triangle, circle, square, all in a relative place like this. Then you had the joysticks here and here, your D-pad, and then whatever your menu buttons were. Now with the N64 controller, I'll put a picture on the screen, obviously you had the three handles on it. So you had the middle handle with the little Joy-Con on it, you had a couple of buttons on one side, and then D-pad I believe. I didn't play a lot of the N64, so I'm just going off what I remember, but the Gamecube controller was similar to that. So instead of that being like an extra arm, this was basically the middle arm on an N64. So instead of that being the middle arm, they put it as like an option. So instead of having like a console does now, a joypad, well, a joystick and a joystick, they're still like that, but one's a smaller version. So they are similar. Obviously PlayStation's the only difference because it goes joystick, joystick next to each other, whereas these consoles go joystick, joystick. But the big difference was buttons. So obviously these buttons were similarly used on the N64, so you can kind of tell the button style is still the same because it's made by the same creators, but the controller was completely different to what they had ever produced before. So it was a big step for them to bring out a controller with two handles, and obviously the Joy-Cons in different places, because every other controller I think at the time was similar size to that. It didn't have, you know, an extra arm on it like the N64 did. But it also was something that intrigued me to get the console, because it's just such a cool dynamic to have the buttons in different places compared to other consoles. It just makes it stick out. It makes it have a unique selling point at the end of the day, and that could be the reason that someone buys that console over another console like an Xbox or PS2 that was competing with it at the time. What I actually bought my Gamecube with was Simpsons Hit and Run. Everyone in existence right now who is a gamer would absolutely love this game to get remade. I'm telling you that now. I would love it. I think every other gamer in the world would love it as well. But I think realistically, I watched a video once before where the guy was explaining that the makers of these Simpsons games, like EA now owns the rights to any Simpsons game, I believe, don't quote me on that, but I know Tapped Out is owned by EA, the previous Simpsons game was also bought out by EA as well. EA did not make this game, it was a different company that I believe went bust, so they still, I'm not sure if they sold the rights to this game or they still own it, but basically, the reason that the guy said that Simpsons games will probably never be remade is because Tapped Out is a game or an app on your phone that has made more money through in-app purchases than any console game that they ever brought out. So it seems a step back for them to make a game that potentially won't make as much money as this other game did. And Tapped Out is still really popular now. Loads of people still play it. Loads of people pay for stuff in the game, which is causing them to earn money. Whereas these types of games, you buy them once, and unless there's in-app purchases that entice you to play them more, and there's no real reason for you to pay more than what the game's worth. And with Tapped Out, obviously you've got in-game purchases you could potentially buy. So there is cause for loads of people wanting this to be remade. At the same time, I don't think it's going to be remade anytime soon. If it does, then I'll eat my words. But yeah, that's the first game, and that's actually the game that I bought my console with, and is probably one of the best games on GameCube in my opinion. The next two games I actually bought in CX, which as you guys know is probably a retro console shop, and they sell retro games like Game Boy stuff and GameCube games and PS2 and all those kinds of stuff. I remember playing this a lot when my brother had a GameCube, and that's Spider-Man on the GameCube, and this game I just remember playing off for absolutely hours and hours, and the graphics on it nowadays are obviously not good compared to the new Star Wars game that came out on PS4, which I actually completed, to be fair, and I don't even own a PS4, I borrowed my brother's. And the next game and last game that I have with my GameCube at the moment is 007 Nightfire. Now, this game, campaign-wise, isn't the greatest. I did prefer other James Bond games to this. There was Russia with Love, which I remember I really enjoyed. But this one has a great multiplayer, so I thought if I ever have friends around and we just decide to have a retro gaming night, then I could play that with them. But yeah, that is my thoughts on the GameCube and the second installment of retro consoles. I don't really know where I'm going to take this series next, because I don't really have any ambitions to get any more consoles at the moment. I don't know how long the gap's going to be between me making this video and another retro consoles video, because I know in my existence right now that I want a PSP, a Game Boy. I've got an original DS, but it's broken, so I don't know whether I want to get another one, but they seem to be quite cheap. They're around 20 UK pounds. And also a couple of older generation consoles like the SNES, the N64. I am still wanting them, but I think for me at the moment, even though I do have a retro gaming room, it is also used as the dining room at my parents' house. I still live with my parents. It's a dining room and my gaming room, and I have to kind of take into consideration that that is their room as well, and I can't just fill it with loads of consoles. So I am running out of a bit of space, but I'll improvise and I'll find a way. Let me know down below in the comment section what your favourite retro console was, or if you're not into retro consoles, what was the first console that you ever remember playing. But if you guys did enjoy this video, make sure to smash a like, subscribe if you're new around here, and I'll see you next time. Peace.